with our panel session on doing the right thing. So joining me is a group of experts, let's say. Kevin Stack, you remember him. Jason DeRuyver, Todd Thompson. Bear with me, I lost track. Derrick from Sherwin-Williams, and Brad Noll from Ohio. I thought we'd start by each of you introducing yourselves and giving a little background, and then telling me, or telling everyone, what did you think of when you got tasked with sitting on this panel of doing the right thing at the right time? What came to your mind when you thought of that? So if you want to start down there, we'll work our way across.
Okay, Todd Thompson. I'm the bridge maintenance engineer for the South Dakota DOT.
Well, what did you think of when you heard the title? What first came to your head?
I didn't remember volunteering for this, but, but it probably happened.
Yes.
Probably.
Told.
Probably got volunteered during one of our planning meetings, and then I forgot about it, and then luckily you sent a reminder email. So I think luckily for me, I'm kind of like a third generation bridge maintenance engineer. We've only had 3 bridge maintenance engineers in our office, but we started doing bridge preservation work in the late 70s, early 80s. And so for us, it's just the way we do business, the way we've always done business. And so preservation maintenance work is nothing new to us. It's just the way we do things. And I think it plays out in how well our bridges are as old as they are.
Okay, Brad?
I'm Brad Noll with the Ohio Department of Transportation. I think back, I looked at our history and how we used to do bridge management, what we used to determine whether we replace, rehab, things like that. And historically, it started as worst first, right? I mean, that's how a lot of people started. And then, there's other things we started looking at as years went on. And I started in a district. Ohio has 12 districts. I started in a district and I was doing our work plan. We do a 5-year work plan and I did it every year. It changed. Funding changed. There was one year when I think when I started, we got $21 million and I did a really good job. So they took away a lot of my money and then it was down to $8. So I don't know if that's really a good pep talk for you. You know, maybe you don't do these things and keep the money, but no, it was also good to see, because Ohio, we have 12 districts, we have different districts, and they all do things that are different. I think when I saw the panel here and we were looking here, I think that's probably the best thing to take away from it. Listen to other people here, find out what they're doing that's different, and then steal it, and then start doing it there. And then you'll look real good.
Yep.
So I'm Derrick with the Sherwin-Williams Company. Prior to my tenure with Sherwin, I was at Kentucky Transportation Cabinet for 20 years. So I'm sort of the oddity in the industry where I sat on the owner's side for a very long time and then came to the coding side of the world instead of going to a consultant. We'll see how that all works out. So with my tenure with Kentucky, I was in materials, but I was responsible for the specifications for coatings and the approval process of coatings. Also got to work very closely with our maintenance department and maintenance division and construction division. So I saw a lot of pretty much every bridge coatings project for almost 20 years in the state of Kentucky firsthand. So I think coming from a perspective, one of the things I thought of for this timeliness for the panel and doing things timely is I saw a very large project set on a 6-year plan for almost 18 years.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting to see the change in perspective over nearly a 30-year career on looking at things to do them now instead of do them whenever or worst case first. That was a big one. We fell in the same category as Ohio. We did things on a worst case first scenario. And I think it's very important to rationalize the money you have and the condition of your structures and realize you can't save them all, but you can save a lot of them. And then the ones you can't, you put them on the replacement list.
Thanks, Derrick.
Like said, my name's Kevin Stack. But same thing here, when we look at it, we got 104 bridges in our county. Doing the right fix at the right time is huge. I've been with the county for 9 years now, and I've done 10 bridge replacements and 2 major rehabs. With 104 bridges at that rate, that's a bridge a year, roughly. These bridges aren't going to last 104 years long.
Yeah.
So doing the right fix at the right time is huge for us. We're just now getting into the preservation side a little bit more. Is how can we start making these bridges that are now hitting at, mid-level, fair condition. How can we get them back to good and get another 20, 30 years out of them, for the best dollar amount that we possibly can. For example, we did 2 major rehabs last year on 2 of our biggest bridges in our county. One 1,600 feet and one 1,100 feet long, clear spanning, navigable waterway. $3.5 million just to do rehabs on them. A rehab's like a remodel. Once you get into it, you never know what you're going to find. On that one, unfortunately, found 20 bad rocker arms that just started to fail on us. So doing the right fix at the right time is how you're going to project your budgets, making sure that you're going to be able to get to your structures and keep that safe public travel way without any major catastrophes of a bridge failing or any type of vehicle accidents against it or anything.
Jason DeRuyver, formerly with the Michigan Department of Transportation for 18 years before been at HDR now for 2 months. While I was at MDOT, I was the bridge maintenance engineer for the last 12 years of my career there, traveling the state with a crew of other bridge engineers and maintenance workers. We'd meet with all of the regional bridge engineers in the state, look at all of their data and inspection data, and we'd come up with a plan of what their maintenance workers could get done during that maintenance season, and we'd help them get it done. We'd help them plan it. We'd buy all the material for them and equipment, and the way we were set up, and it was great. We were also responsible for looking at all of the new products and technologies in bridge preservation. At least myself and one other person from the area I was in would come to this every year to learn all about the new products that the vendors were coming up with. The biggest takeaway I've ever seen, though, on doing the right thing at the right time in the bridge maintenance world is I got to credit this to Dave Juntanen, who was just up here. He came up with a fancy spreadsheet and chart that showed how many bridges in the state of Michigan were transitioning into the poor category and needed major rehabilitation or replacement before we started doing bridge maintenance in the state. And he compared that to what it was when we started doing bridge maintenance in the state. And it was, I think we were over 100 bridges a year falling into the poor category before bridge maintenance, and we were down to about 20 a year falling into the poor category once we started doing bridge maintenance. So unless you're doing bridge maintenance, you're never going to get caught up. You'll be just drowning in bridges transitioning to that poor state. So that's what I was thinking.
All right, well, as a panel discussion, I posed a few questions to everyone last week, so I'm sure they've all given thorough evaluation of my questions. So I'll start with, is there one right bridge preservation strategy for a given bridge element in a certain condition? If not, what factors are considered when evaluating the strategy?
They stole our mic.
Ah, they did.
Put it back down.
There we go. You can go first. So,
What was the question?
yeah, is there only one right bridge preservation strategy? If not, what factors are considered when evaluating your strategies?
Good question. There isn't one process, one thing that fits all. It really comes down to who the owner is, what your inventory looks like, and how you currently maintain it. We just heard from from South Dakota here. They throw salt down, on their roads. It's going to deteriorate differently than someone who doesn't use salt or de-icing methods. In Ohio, on state system, salt, we go to town on it. We throw it everywhere. But our locals, they don't. They don't have any money, so they don't put the salt down. Theirs tend to last a little bit longer than ours. So again, the question was, is there one that fits all, or do you treat them differently? Yeah, you treat them differently based off of how you maintain them, and obviously what the funding allows you to do with it.
Any other?
If you can take one thing away, clean your bridge. I mean, I've been to bridges where there's been like 6 inches to a foot of dirt on the shoulder and the sidewalk, growing bushes and grass. It's trapping moisture and rotting your concrete. I've seen so much dirt in joints, strip seal joints before. It's pushed the strip seal right out of the joint, the gland right out. And then I was just at a bridge less than a month ago that had so much dirt on the top of the abutment from the joint failure, I couldn't even see the bearing. It was completely gone. I mean, completely covered in dirt. So
In
Clean your bridge.
Ohio, we have preventative measures there. We do sweeping, we do sealing, and we also do cleaning, which can be kind of the same. But yeah, we'll go through. We'll clean off beam seats. We'll go through and we'll sweep to unclog scuppers. In some cases, we've actually made agreements with our locals and using their street sweepers to go through and just clean off the bridges. And everybody's next question, yes, we did get an agreement with environmental to actually do it. So that was probably the biggest win of all that. But yeah, we focus on those three, and that's a really good point.
And both of those guys' comments about cleaning them, that's one thing that we're just starting in on. From the local side is, before, like I said, I can only speak back 9 years, but before that, we had very bare minimum, just a bridge a year, do what you need to keep them in shape. No one really got into that preservation side of it. Now moving into that, it definitely, at the right time, what are you going to do based on what that bridge is? Average daily traffic's huge for us. Does that bridge carry 19,000 cars a day, or does it carry 9 cars a day? That puts it at top priority. And what are we going to replace it with? We do anything from a timber deck bridge to a, getting ready to start our first GRS IBS bridge. So, I mean, we're locals are out there, we're trying everything we can just to make these bridges last longer. But the last thing we want to do is go put a $500,000 three-sided arch on abutments for 9 cars a day. So preservation is just thinking, what is that material type, and what does that bridge need right now?
Yeah, strategy is, I think cost comes into play for sure. Obviously, the hopeful thing is that everyone has a budget, and, it'd be great if we did spend 25% of our budget on preservation. So we need to start from somewhere, whether it's 5% or 25%, having a strategy and aiming, even at the low-hanging fruit, sweeping, cleaning the deck drains, keeping the water off the bridge, it's all good. My next question was, how do you figure what the right time is for a preservation action? I'll give you a little hint. I was aiming a little bit at, is it condition only? Do you wait for the paint to be 40% gone, or is it cyclic? I have found in Illinois that we've had better success when we publish a recommended cycle. The recommended cycle is put an overlay on a bridge deck at 25 years. Replace the bridge deck at 50, and then do another overlay at 75 years. If you have a recommended cycle, it's not, by God, you have to, but it helps sell it. So do you guys have any thoughts along that line of condition or cycle for determining your preservation actions?
How much money do I got that year?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah.
It gets into that. I mean, that's not the greatest answer, but when you get into this, I mean, for road agencies, we're looking at, in our county, 1,500 miles of roadway, that not in the greatest shape, where our bridge system, we're averaging, 90% good or fair. So, when you look at that, as far as what do we do, I mean, we can do it on a cycle, but what if it doesn't need it? Are we going to sit there and say, well, hey, we're on a cycle, we're going to do it because we said so, even though you say, a plan can change. Do you stick to that, or do you sit there and you go off your bridge inspections? That's kind of where we're going, is we're taking our bridge data. We're putting into our bridge forecast model saying, hey, What if I do this, this, and this at this time? How long can I prolong this bridge? How long can it last? And how much more time can I gain out of that at the, hate to say it, but the least dollar amount? You know, I want to stretch my pennies as far as I possibly can, but we're not going to short curve anything. So how much can I do and when can I do it?
I would say it can be both. It really depends on the element, your environment, traffic, what you're trying to do. Things like sealing cracks, washing bridge decks, you know, that should probably be cyclic, you know, doing it every year. Deck overlays are probably more condition-based on when to do an overlay. Once you start getting so much deterioration, try to keep your bridge deck either good or in fair condition before it deteriorates. And so it's kind of a loaded question, I guess, that it's really variable.
Yeah. From one standpoint, I'll also say, you know, the overlay is important, but, you know, if the joints are bad, half the cost of doing a concrete cementitious overlay is replacing the joints. So if you're going to replace the joints, you might want to consider if that's the time to put the overlay on, even if you haven't met the condition goal or requirements there or thoughts that you have.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's a little bit of both. Sometimes with the whatever work you're proposing, you know, you guys mentioned that sealing can be more cyclical, whereas, you know, overlays, redecks, things like that, you know, aren't necessarily quite like that. Those go more on judgment based off of condition. In a perfect world here, we're trying to take that plot of condition and time and just flatten it out. You know, we want to try to make it as flat as we can. We're not going to keep it flat, but we're going to try to work towards that. That's the optimal thing. So like when we talk about deck sealing, well, in Ohio, we usually have about an 8 to 12 year cycle for asphalt paving. So when I was at the district, I would look at those, and every time those routes would come up for paving, they didn't necessarily have to pave, but they were looking at it, and that was what was planned. If they did pave, I would purposely go through every bridge on that segment and say, okay, what can I do to these? What can I do to flatten that curve? If it was let's say it's a bridge that's 5 years old, rigid, you know, overlay, you know, or not overlay, just rigid wearing surface concrete, whatever, it looks amazing. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to seal it. And people will look at me and say, why are you spending money on that one? And I say, because I want to flatten the curve. We're going to, you know, this is preventative. We're going to try to keep it at that point and not let it go down. So other times you don't really get that. Sometimes if you do have joints or a redeck or even an overlay, they're going to, you know, it's much more obvious. But I think the preventative maintenance side is you probably putting money or work into bridges that maybe don't necessarily look like they need it, but you're going to try to lengthen and flatten that curve on when it actually starts to go down a little bit.
I think it is both. I think it's really depending on what the preservation action being entertained is, what that action is. So like a bridge deck, there's a lot. All of these conferences, these meetings always have a fair amount of conversation about bridge deck sealing in them, whether it's the overlays or penetrant sealers. The penetrant sealers, that's a dissipating action. So there is a finite life cycle to those. 5 to 7 years is a fairly typical number to work with. If you're going to go down that route of using those types of products to protect your bridge decks, they're great. They work, but you have to know they have to be replaced. And if you wait till it's a condition-based survey where you've got spalling deck, well, you're too late. So that's something that and 5 to 7 is not it's a range. Some people get a little more out of them. Some people get a little less, just depending on what your atmospheric conditions and exposures are. Structural steel coatings, concrete coatings, on the other hand, those are typically more condition-based. And many years ago, a new structural steel coating application was projected 30-year life cycle. Everybody wanted 30 years, expected 30 years. Some people get that. A lot of people didn't. That number's sort of come down a little bit. In the industry, we're talking more 20 to 25 years for a lot of applications as a generic number. Again, it really depends on where that structure is and what the atmospheric conditions and its exposure rates are. And the preventive maintenance, the cleaning, I mean, if you're going to institute a bridge washing program, you don't need to be so much worried about the pressure of the water you're using as much as the volume of water will help you just as much. In a lot of cases, if you're trying to remove chlorides or soluble salts, is a generic term, the volume of water is at least as important or maybe more important in a lot of cases than the pressure.
When I was a regional bridge manager at MDOT and for the Detroit metro area, I would never not work on a bridge that was within a road project, ever. I would always find something, whether it was even just a silane or a healer sealer, because I could strong arm the road program to pay for all the maintenance of traffic, and I could get it done really cheap. So just, even if you look at a bridge and says, well, that bridge is in good shape, I don't need to work on it, find something. You know, whether even if it's just a silane, something to extend the life.
You hit it right there, but the big part of that is if you're already going on a project, you can piggyback on theirs, and you can essentially get free MOT there. They're already going to be setting up zones. They're already going to be there. You don't have to, mobilize or anything like that. You can just go out there and do whatever work you need to on the bridge and just piggyback on that MOT. So good.
Yeah, I mean, and that doesn't even have to stop at just state projects. If, like, we'll find out a local agency is reconstructing a road on both sides of our bridge, we'll coordinate. We'll even if it's just getting our MDOT crew out there to do a deck patch while they have their road closed for reconstruction, we will coordinate that. We're not going to just let that go.
I'm glad you don't work for MDOT anymore. I'd be making you pay for your MOT then.
Yeah, I'll add one thing I thought of when you guys mentioned jumping on, but it's also important to look at your bridges as a link in the roadway, because if you've got, 20 bridges in a row within a 7-mile stretch, working on them one at a time is not the right way to do it. Even if you're doing something that's out of sequence, you want to keep them in, they were all built probably within a few years. Give them the same treatment, even if they don't warrant it by condition. Keep them in sequence, especially this is on the state side, because MOT is huge and it stretches. So, all right, here's my next question. It goes along the lines of talking about some of the things we've talked about. What have you found that helps you sell the work so that you can get the funding to do the right thing at the right time? I liken it to what I mentioned earlier, having a guideline that talks about cyclic maintenance. It's easier to point, well, the guidelines say, than saying, well, I say. Well, the guidelines sell better than Sarah says, but yeah. You guys have any comments?
So from a coatings manufacturer standpoint, that's things that we like to talk with you as owners at these conferences or even in meetings in your facilities, is what can we bring to market? What can we do to help you, improve your daily efforts, improve your daily work? And from a coating side, there's been a number of manufacturers that have brought two-coat systems to market instead of the traditional belt and
Suspenders.
Yes, thank you. That's the word. Belt and suspenders, 3-coat systems. Zinc epoxy urethanes. They're tried, they're true. Everybody knows them, everybody loves them. We still love to sell them, thank you. But a little selfless pitch there.
Yeah.
Thanks for laughing, Dick. But there's data out there, the ASHTO program, Product Evaluation and Audit Solutions program now. I even got the name right. Mm-hmm. Somebody tell Catherine.
Yes.
That there's data that shows performance-based data of the old traditional 3-coat systems that everybody knows, recognizes, and loves, as compared to more innovative 2-coat solutions. On new steel, we've seen, from an industry perspective, we've seen more adoption of 2-coat systems on new steel bridges because the fabrication shops, if you've worked with fabrication shops, this should make sense to you. They provide steel, but they sell time. So if you're coating in the shop, if your requirements are to fully coat that structure in a fabrication shop, the paint shop is always the bottleneck. Any fabricator can fabricate far more steel than they can paint in the same time frame. So by moving from a traditional 3-coat system, which has more time for application, more time for curing, more time for inspection, fewer coats, faster turnaround time, more conducive coating types, coatings that cure faster. So again, you're controlling time in the shop. That's helping. The coatings are probably more expensive, quite honestly. But the offset in time is where the money savings, that's where the cost savings to the owner is. So translating that to the field, it works the same way. You still save time. And years ago, technology was expensive and labor was cheap. Today, technology is cheap. Labor is what's expensive. So looking at alternatives and technologies that, whether it's coatings or any other innovative solutions that can help save time, typically saves you money.
From the local standpoint, you know, like I said earlier with the state DOTs and stuff, I mean, you guys have your departments. I mean, you're respected by, you know, your governors because you're a state department. You have those groups. When you move down into the local side a little bit, you have more. We're more in direct firing of that political side of, you know, constituents. The public have direct access to these county commissioners who then listen to them, whether they're right or wrong, and turn around and look at you and go, well, why'd you do this? So getting in there and trying to persuade them, hey, we need this money to fix this bridge. Yes, it's only 500 feet long and it's costing us $1 million, where $1 million would do about 7.5 miles of paved road. That's a hard sell to the public because they only see that 500 feet on top. They don't see everything underneath. It's hard to sell everything underneath where all the money's at. So trying to justify that is tough on the local side because, like I said, the respect level there, even though Jason says it's not, it even gets worse at the local level because, like, oh, you're just a county. What do you know? You don't have these teams of data research you rely on the state for. So, you know, I guess our best mode was, hey, we'll just shut down the busiest bridge for a month and show you how serious it is.
Yeah, performance measures comes in a little bit. I mean, as you spoke of, having a performance measure that says we're going to keep X% of our joints in good condition. And if we can sell that to the public, hopefully that's something they'll see and say, why are you out there on this bridge? Well, we need to keep, the joints were bad, we needed to keep our joint conditions up. So we need to find ways to sell preservation to the public, even if the bridge doesn't look bad. We know that what we're doing, either by cyclic maintenance or by condition-based, is going to hopefully preserve and flatten the line. So that in the long term, we're getting more years out of our bridges, which we need to have because the big bump of money isn't coming. So those were the rest of my questions. You guys have any comments, or we'll open it up to the floor for any questions that you might have on how do we do the right thing at the right time.
Real quick, the only thing I'll add to that is, and I think it was already mentioned earlier, pictures, charts, things like that, something visual. If you go out and start rambling numbers, whoever you're trying to sell this to, they're going to fall asleep before you're done talking. Show them, figures, show them charts, things like that. If you have two, life cycle cost analysis, charts up and look at them, you can see the difference right away. That's going to show way more than you can try to explain. And that would be what we would do. We would do a life cycle cost on a single bridge type thing, look at what you could do and show the alternatives and find out when the optimum time to do things is. You don't know that. It's a guess. You may be wrong, but that's just how it goes sometimes. We can't predict how they deteriorate. We just have to plan ahead. And that's the next thing is plans. You have to show them long-term, years out. If you show the preventative maintenance stuff on a 1, 2, 3 year cycle, if you're just showing that immediately, you're not going to see the benefit. If you look further down the line, if you show a long-term plan, you're going to see more of a benefit there. It actually becomes substantial. So again, pictures, figures, things like that, but then also make sure that you're actually planning at a decent interval and going further out. Otherwise, you may not get the buy-in from superiors or people that are going to be making decisions with those purses and things like that.
Hi, my name is Siva Karoshan. One other question I have for the panel is, I know we talked about deck preservation, we talked about substructure preservation. Have we all thought about normalizing preservation for the whole structure, all the different elements, so that you can achieve a 100-year service life for all of the elements, so that it get the full life out of the structure?
I guess the approach that we've taken, and it started back in the 70s, was that, designing the right bridge types initially, not having bridge joints. And so by doing that, we never get chlorides down to our substructures. So we have very, very few problems with substructures anymore because we've eliminated joints out of so many bridges. So really it is just bridge decks that we really have to worry about. Even bridge coatings on our steel girders, we're just now repainting some of our interstate air bridges that were built in the 60s, and because our environment is, for the most part of the state, is fairly arid. We had one paint project where the paint failed in the 80s and all the paint peeled off. We never did anything. We still don't have corrosion on that bridge. So for us, it's bridge deck corrosion is our main problem.
I think to kind of go along with that, again, not to be a broken record, but, for the local side, it's funding. Like I said, we did 2 major rehabs, and that was, beam end repair, partial painting, joint repair, deck overlay, and all that. It was another $2 million to paint the entire structure underneath. That's $2 million that public is not going to see, and they're not going to understand why you didn't pave their road. So it's one of those balancing acts, for us is what can I do at minimum and get the maximum effect, knowing that, it'd be beneficial to do it all right now, right here, right now. But then that's 4 more miles of road that don't get done that year. So, that's kind of the local side argument with it is, again, balancing that plan and making sure that, we get our strategic planning down, we get the right amount of fix for the right amount of dollar at the right time.
If you're looking to improve the condition on elements, it's one thing to go through and do preventative maintenance to flatten the curve and to try to hold it. If you're going in and improving it, your mindset changes. That means you're going to try to get the most benefit for the least amount of dollars. You're now thinking, in terms of how can I raise it without spending as much. I think that's a good way to go about it. Sometimes the issues with that are things that we can't see. It can be scour. It can be environmental issue, something else out there that comes across that you can't really predict. That happens, all the time in some of these, sketchy areas. But yeah, you don't always know. You try to plan for it. You go off what you can. But if you're trying to bring the condition up, that's a little bit different than preventative maintenance type thing. That's going to be, again, you're looking at life cycle costs. You're looking at, try to raise that benefit.
Don had a question.
In our state, we have 5,100 bridges on the state system. They don't last 100 years. So we've never, I've been around a while, 100 years almost, half 100, 45 next
anything,
July.
but yeah.
Anyway, we've never done 50 in a year. So how do you guys handle that challenge? I've been screaming at our people, for 15 years, there's a bubble coming. And anyway, we've had, with governor changes, you go from 20 million for maintenance down to 3 million. And we're back up to 45 million right now. But, with inflation, that 45 is probably like 25 million right now. So again, how do you guys look at that? Have you looked at that bubble? Because we've got a serious one coming.
When you gave your initial presentation, you showed the bridge of what the original cost was to build that. Oh, that was tough to see there, to see how much more expensive that bridge got and how much, it is now versus then. We know everybody sees some coming here. You can see the wave coming. We know that, some of these bridges are all it's not gonna happen gradually. It's gonna be, and then we're gonna have to figure it out. So going through and doing a plan now might be able to lessen that burden then. But it's not going to make it any easier there, especially if you have, portions of your inventory that are all built at the same time. things go right, they're probably all going to be doing badly at the same time too. So you have to kind of plan on that ahead of time and just try to work it in and kind of keep it, out there. But
Yeah, we talked a little bit about bridge management systems, and a couple people have brought up that it's good to have a forecast, that forecasts your bridge condition. So if you do the maintenance, the condition is this. If you don't, I mean, some of our bean counters, I'm not fully on board with their numbers, but they'll say that based on this budget and doing this, in 10 years, our bridge conditions will be at 87%. Our road conditions might be at 60%. But, Illinois has made a choice, thankfully for me, bridge over pavement, because there's a bottom in the hole of the pavement. You can fill it with coal patch, but there might not be a bottom in the hole in the bridge deck. So, but, and how do you sell it? You definitely have to work a little on how important the bridge is versus the pavement, because that is one of the things we're struggling with. I mean, ideally, both are going to be in the 90% range, but if you got to make a choice because the budget isn't there, but it's nice to be able to predict what your budget's going to give you.
Again, kind of the planning side, if all of a sudden your inventory gets really bad in a year, and then you go that year saying, hey, I need more money to do this, it's going to come off one way.
Yeah.
If you show in a chart, hey, we're going to have a big fall here, it's going to happen in 5 years is what I predict. If you show it long term, you can at least kind of get ahead of it, and they'll have a better chance of actually getting funds allocated towards your, having something happen there. But again, the planning part is what's going to make it a little easier.
So when it comes to maintenance of bridges and looking at small, like counties and townships, I know in North Dakota, the bridges that are not on a state or U.S. highway are locals. Do you guys have like a maintenance checklist and best materials used for types of materials? I know when I started with the county 25 years ago, we went out and looked at the bridge when we got a notice that there was an alert 3 or someone called on some of these rural roads. Now we're out there before the inspection comes, making sure it looks good, but sometimes knowing what type of material to use. So if you want to clean your deck, is there a checklist of, hey, you should do these type of things, and here's a good product to use as a sealer? Is that something you guys provide or provide training to the locals? Because there's a lot of...
There's actually the guides on the expert task group guides. Pocket guides. There's actually a pocket guide on the website for TSP2. Sorry. You know what I mean? On bridge cleaning, on how to clean it properly, how to get in the corners and things like that. So I would look there. Now I'll be honest, sealant probably varies by the state. My particular state has a qualified product list. So we don't want to tell you, oh, it's this one, X. We want to tell you, all these products meet our criteria. You could pick whichever one you want off that list. So I think many of the states are in that way. But you can always make a phone call and ask what, someone's preference is. What I'll tell you on a phone call is different than what I'll put in writing.
So I know how to ask, but how many agencies don't even know what to ask?
Yeah.
So for us, we're in that same exact boat. Like I said, we're getting into it. We can sit here and have trainings with MDOT, but we don't have anything in writing of how to do this step by step. And when you bring new people on to your maintenance staff, this is something that they can do. Well, how do you train them? What do they know? So only speaking for Michigan, MDOT has a very detailed operations manual that spells out every fixed type from road maintenance to bridge maintenance that they do. Granted, it's MDOT, so it's very detailed and has a lot of resources that locals don't have. So, for our instance, we're working with a consultant, actually Drew and his firm now, creating an operations manual specific to our county, using the same format, the same fixed types as the state, but making it us. I mean, there's just some things that we just can't do or I don't want to say don't need to do, but we don't have to go that detail. I don't have to set up a 3-mile MOT for flood coating a deck. I can sit there and put a guy on each side and flag it around. I mean, so that we're in that process of doing that, just making that specific. But yeah, we rely on the qualified products that the state list of what to do. And like it's by state. So Michigan's the same way. They have a qualified product list. So, we just use what's on that list.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good question, and I'm sure probably most of the state agencies, we probably haven't done a good job of partnering with our local agencies. I think this group is a really good start. LTAPs, a lot of counties probably have very good operational manuals for keeping their fleet up to date, oil changes, maintenance, but their big assets like bridges, they don't do anything because they don't know what to do. And I think we could probably do a lot, especially with this group, to help the locals out by making recommendations on what to do.
Another resource, Sarah, this is David over here, to your right.
That right, yes.
Your other right. One of the groups within this group is, one of the big working groups is a local outreach group, and they've created some pretty incredible resources. We'll go over those a little bit on Thursday, but that's another pretty good resource as well.
Yeah, they've actually come to certain areas and done like a rodeo show.
Yep.
So
So,
things like that are available if you ask.
Not too long ago, Jason actually came to Ohio and spoke at our Ohio Bridge Conference, which is mainly made up of our counties. He did a breakdown. He showed all the, sealing, all the different types of maintenance, and he went through products. It was really, really good. They, got to see it. They got, a lot of ideas. They got kind of on board. The other thing that I can say is, if you could try to work together, try to, help each other. We have some of our state, bridge crews that will go help some of the locals. They'll, go do some work, and then, in exchange, they'll let us use their sweeper, their street sweepers, things like that. You can make agreements. You can go through and work with your locals to find, how you can, work together and go through. And sometimes they'll, we have a bridge crew that'll go outside of their concentrated area, go to another district just to help there. So try to work together. Again, Jason gave that really good presentation. That was the same presentation that was given on our webinars, on our monthly meetings.
On our
So
local,
you should just tell locals to come listen to us on our monthly webinars because they're brilliant, and we can, we can show them.
And any local
Excellent.
agency is welcome to come to the local agency working group meeting. Anyone can come.
and if you've got a question, share it
And if
with
you've got a
them.
question,
Yeah.
share it. I make myself available to talk bridge maintenance with anyone. I could talk about it. I'd think about it all day long
All right,
because
well,
I'm
you
weird.
can think about it when we go and get a
Yes.
refreshment. So thanks to the panel for stepping up here and helping me out. Any other comments before we close for the day?